The Riddle of the Earth, Chapter 11. The Effects of the Comet Impact in the North. To the phenomena described, we should not omit to link up many of the volcanoes traced in the earlier part of this inquiry, but a region closely concerned, where I venture to suggest the residue of the comet may have fallen, although a body like this is necessarily dispersed over a wide area, is Iceland. It is possible also that someday research and investigation in Greenland will reveal remains of a considerable prehistoric civilization. Greenland, called by the Danes Kronland, or the land of Kronos, appeals dumbly to the attentions of the scientist and the prospector, who might be tempted were he to realize that the Greeks believed Hyperborea was paved with gold. Investigations in recent years by Sir John Murray and Sir Johann Short, confirming the Wyville-Thomson expedition before them, show very definitely from deep sea soundings that originally Greenland stretched much further south than east, and that Iceland, the Faroes, and Ireland were within easy access of it. The comet that left its residue where Iceland stands in doing so destroyed Greenland, and by the resultant adjustment of the Earth's axis to meet the new physical conditions of enormous materia deposited mainly in one area, threw Greenland into the Arctic Circle, inaccessible and lost land. The comet causing the drift mutilated the British Isles and yet benefited them by its gifts. Its effects were very intermittent, but it is plain enough that all these regions lying nearest to Greenland and Iceland suffered the worst ravages. The Shetlands were once a very considerable island, but it is evident that they, like the Orkneys, were bombarded by meteors, torn by recent earthquakes, and large portions permanently were submerged. The Outer Hebrides, as the nearest locality to the actual target or centre of impact, Iceland, the Faroe Islands, and Shetland Islands alone excepted, were, like these, literally torn to shreds. The case of Benbecula, lying between North and South Uist, has been previously mentioned. This tiny isle, 7.5 miles in breadth and 6 in length, contains over 150 lochs, mostly small but very deep, also a great number of deep fjords, while off the coast in the lochs are hundreds of small islets. Although the formation of the islands was lower Silurian with crops of old red sandstone, it now contains great deposits of basalt, and there is some evidence in Benbecula of a volcanic crater having been shattered. It is probable before this violent onslaught that the Outer Hebrides were a heterogeneous mass stretching over 50 miles to the west, and perhaps embracing St Kilda and the Flannan Islets. The Faroe Islands, closest of all to the focus of this titanic cataclysm, naturally suffered the worst. They consist of 21 isles with numerous other rocks, and the little we know of them geologically states that they are composed of basalt. Trees no longer grow, but formerly flourished in these latitudes, and at some possibly prehistoric date they were occupied by ecclesiastics supposedly of the Celtic Church. A drowned volcanic crater lies off the Faroe bank, and Professor Brogar, the Norwegian oceanographer, has expressed his belief that they stood at a higher level during the glacial epoch. This means that they occupied a larger area, and whether their reduction is due to a seismic disturbance of the bed of the ocean or to a vast increase in the water, the results come to the same thing. Undoubtedly, many islands in this area were submerged, some temporarily, others permanently, whence it would seem the origin of the tradition of the lost Pleiades or Atlantic Islands, which the subsequent makers of the new calendar placed as a group of stars in the sky, as they did also the river Eridanus, to immortalize the event. A feature of this tremendous impact was its patchiness. While Lancashire, Cumberland, Wales and across in Ireland in a direction southwest was plentifully visited, the Isle of Man escaped except for a patch about Ramsey. It would also appear as though certain mountain heights had been very considerably reduced. Geologists say that Mount Snowdon was once 7 times higher than is now the case. This is from the book E.A. Kilner, 4 Welsh Countries. It is declared that the Mendips at the time of the Carboniferous period underwent a change, and that the region was submerged 6,000 feet or more and solid rock washed or torn away. Again, same author, F.A. Knight, Somerset. There is reason to believe that Dartmoor, with its vast gigantic beds of extinct volcanoes, at one time was elevated to heights infinitely greater than is the case now. And again, the author F.A. Knight, Devonshire. This catastrophe took place at a time, moreover, not merely when man lived on the earth, but when the British Isles were populated by a race or races of men famous in the world's history, whose records and sufferings have fortunately been preserved, although as yet their publication is profoundly misunderstood. Perhaps public opinion is not yet sufficiently ripe for an entire reconstruction of the history of mankind, but sooner or later it must be forthcoming. In spite of not one but 2 such catastrophic occurrences, though the second mainly operated along the east coast, one of whose results was the emigration of survivors to more kindly regions, the settlements of modern man for the most part are but a continuation of the primordial sites in so far as it is predictable, having regard to climate and that guiding principle, commerce. It is the profound conviction of the writer, who can trace the city's history more or less continuously over a very great period, that the city of Bath possesses a long lost history, at once amazing and illustrious, and was a very great city at the time of the drift. There is a strange but significant barbaric poem extant, entitled, quote, The Ruined City, attributed to the early Saxons, but betraying a knowledge of the lore of Bath, which points to its prehistoric grandeur. Strange to behold is the stone of this wall, broken by fate the strongholds are bursten, the works of giants decaying, the roofs are fallen, the towers are tottering, and smouldering palaces are roofless. And this is from Errol, translation of the Bash National History and Field Club. The type of people who dwelt in Scotland prior to this eventful occasion may be retraced by certain relics which survive. One such exists in the Achnacrith Moss, a desolate Argyllshire moor situated in a region where are found a serpent temple, vitrified forts and stone circles and the like. Sir Daniel Wilson alludes to this Achnacrith Moss, known generally as, quote, black moss because of its colour. Rising up through this are several large cairns, with here and there remains of others, while in various parts portions of the moss have been cleared away, showing at a depth of from 8 to 10 feet the original soil upon which these mounds have been raised. Quote, It is no vague conjecture, says this author, quote, which refers to an era altogether prior to that of its earliest historical occupants, the period when this wild and barren moor was the scene of life and intelligence, and it may be of many useful arts. And this is from the Prehistoric Annals of Scotland, Volume 1, page 91. In 1914, 2 Scottish archaeologists discovered ancient cairns in the Isle of Aronsay, Argyllshire, at the mouth of Loch Sunart, near the Black Moss, bearing traces of the existence of civilized men at a very early date. In 1916, a spacious subterranean place was discovered by a Scottish crofter when ploughing. The structure is octagonal in shape and is separated from an encompassing wall by the same shape by a passage 4 feet wide and 5 feet high. Both roof and walls were built without mortar, but were very strongly put together, and many of the stones were remarkably large. Sounds kind of similar to Newgrange. And this is from Paul Mart. It's spelled though P-A-L-L. Pall Mall Gazette, 17th of April 1916. I can't talk today. Similar structures have been found in Ireland, like I said, Newgrange, and in the Orkneys and Shetlands. Orkneys? I think he means Orkneys, but I'm not sure. In this same area of Argyllshire and the Isles are many vitrified forts, one such being at Rahoy, 2.5 miles from Oronsay. How did this become vitrified? Surely not by the act of man. On the Isle of Arran are 2 ancient round temples, and on the Isle of Lewis is an astronomical temple at Callernish, consisting of 48 upright stones. A sunk altar chamber resembling the pit in pyramids and in the form of a cross, the point of intersection being enclosed within a circle. The shaft pointing north is 392 feet long. The cross shaft or wings is 141 feet, and the diameter of the circle is 42 feet. It is impossible, says a recent writer, not to see in this temple the emblem of Asher, in which the god is encircled about the waist by a ring. And this is from A.W. Watmore, Insulae Britannicae, page 213. These temple foundations were discovered under an accumulation of great moss, which must have taken ages to collect. The Isle of Iona, adjoining Mull, is not only the most sacred prehistoric part of Scotland, but it has associations of a strange Egyptian character. Its Street of the Dead and a carving in the ruined cathedral of Thoth or Hermes weighing souls. There too are the tombs of prehistoric kings whose very names are lost. Originally also in Iona stood a temple of 360 upright stones as at Avebury. These matters all point to a very ancient and extinct civilization, whose priests understood the science of the heavens and based their religion on it. And I've actually been to Iona for this very reason, because of this author, Comet Beaumont. And I've also been to the little islet, what's it called again, that you'd have to take the boat to, Staffa. We've also been to Staffa. And we'll get back to Staffa. We're going to circle around back to that, the whole Isle of Iona and its significance. And interestingly, how it's very, very important. It's a site of pilgrimage for Christians as well. And there's many kings who are buried there, not only Scottish kings, but we'll get into that at another time.